Hey everybody, Craig Silliphant, the Movie Geek here. Another year, another holiday special. This year I want to talk about one of my favorite Christmas properties, Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. We won't have time to hit all the movie and TV renditions of this story, but we can talk about the history of the material and some of my favorite versions. First, let's get into the way back machine and look at the original book. Set the dial for 1843 when Charles Dickens' novella was first published. It tells the story of Ebenezer Scrooge, an elderly miser who's visited by the ghost of his former business partner and the spirits of Christmas past, present, and future. They force him to confront his miserly nature and some of the choices that he's made in life. Now, if you think this is a stuffy, dusty old book, you couldn't be more wrong. Sure, there are phrases like, "Why so, it's Christmas!" But don't let that fool you. This book is a high-concept, science fiction story with a deeply thematic set of social themes and a lot of comedy to boot. Dickens wrote the story during the Victorian era. Celebrating Christmas had been steadily growing in popularity, and new traditions like Christmas trees were taking hold. There was a revival of Christmas carols, which had been in decline over the previous 100 years or so. Modern Christmas as we know it was starting to form. Now, Dickens had written Christmas stories before, but he was inspired following a visit to a school for London's street children. Dickens had a deep and personal social outrage because he lived in poor conditions growing up for a while. The story started as a pamphlet to highlight the plight of destitute children, but Dickens realized that dramatizing it would highlight his themes much better. The treatment of the poor and the ability of a selfish man to redeem himself by transforming into a more sympathetic character are key themes of this book. Not all the reviews were kind. Some critics thought his approach to the story was childish and shallow, but here's the thing. It inspired the people. It gave rise to a spirit of charitable giving in Britain at the time, not only from average citizens, but also writers like Robert Louis Stevenson, who vowed to be more charitable. The author G.K. Chesterton wrote, "The beauty and blessing of the story lie in the great furnace of real happiness that glows through Scrooge and everything around him. Whether the Christmas visions would or would not convert Scrooge, they convert us." I agree. It always gives me goosebumps. As I said, there are a lot of versions of the story. There's radio plays, books, graphic novels, every media you can imagine. Every TV show has done an episode where their main character is visited by ghosts at Christmas. And of course, the movies are a staple at Christmas time, especially around my house. Let's run through my favorite film versions. Of course, I apologize in advance if I missed your favorite. We're really just skimming the surface here. There's a couple of good 1930s versions, but the gold standard is Scrooge from 1951 starring Alastair Sim. It's also called A Christmas Carol sometimes in the US. I think this is one of the best told and best acted versions of the story. It has a great blend of that old sepia-toned cinema that can create some Christmas nostalgia while still being modern enough that nothing is lost in translation. Another great version is the 1984 George C. Scott A Christmas Carol. This one teases out some of the darker atmosphere and elements in parts of the book. There's a moment or two that are actually downright freaky.
Ebenezer Scrooge!
I fear you more than any specter I've seen.
Let's go from light to dark. I should quickly name check Bill Murray's Scrooged here, which is always fun. But if I'm looking for a goofy version of the story, it's the Muppets Christmas Carol all the way. Can you have a better Fezziwig than Fozziwig? Michael Caine plays Scrooge in a story populated by Jim Henson's Muppets, like Kermit the Frog as Bob Cratchit and Little Robin the Frog as Tiny Tim. Now lastly, I also have to mention the old Canadian Tire commercials.
Appliances, sporting goods, home entertainment.
Still not interested.
There's even a special section for toys.
Couldn't care less.
They're childhood nostalgia for me, but I also work as an advertising writer and strategist in real life, and there are only a few taglines better than "Give like Santa" and "Save like Scrooge." The great thing is, there's so many versions of A Christmas Carol, you can watch a different one every year without repeating yourself, but those are the versions I tend to keep in rotation each year. This is Craig Silliphant, the Movie Geek, and I hope you have a great Christmas doing what I do, sitting around the house during the holidays, watching movies.
Merry Christmas to everybody, and a Happy New Year to the world!